All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to people in the gallery. Just going to begin, as we always do, with an acknowledgement that we gather today on the traditional unceded territories of the Comox First Nation, the traditional keepers of this land. And we always read one of the calls to the action. This is number 48 on reconciliation. We call upon the church parties to the settlement agreement and all other faith groups and interfaith social justice groups in Canada who have not already done so to formally adopt and comply with the principles, norms, and standards of the United Nations declarations on the rights of Indigenous people as a framework for reconciliation. This would include, but not be limited to, the following commitments. 1, ensuring that their institution, policies, programs, and practices comply with the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People. 2, respecting Indigenous people's rights, self-determination in spiritual matters, including the right to practice, develop, and teach their own spiritual and religious traditions, customs, and ceremonies, consistent with Article 12.1 of the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People. And 3, engaging in ongoing public dialogue and actions to support the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People. And 4, issuing a statement no later than March 31st, 2016, from all religious denominations and faith groups as to how they will implement the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People. And we'll go to now to adoption of minutes for May 7th. We get a motion.
Adoption.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any opposed? Seeing none, that passes. And we have 3 delegations today, and we will start off with the Comox Valley Cycling Coalition. I'll ask Mike Ken to come to the mic. If you just press the button there, I can get you set up.
Good to go? Perfect. I'll just wait for the, there we are. Hello, and I hope you're not getting tired of us. But I know staff is speaking later to the Cumberland Courtney Connector, and we've had extensive discussions and appreciate the ability to be able to come in and talk to what the users think of this this very important piece of infrastructure. So hopefully you see the parkway on the left. Hopefully it looks more like something on the right that people can ride on. Going back to the need for the connector, obviously this is all in the report that the staff's done, the Active Transportation Network Plan, the Regional Growth Strategy, all push towards getting residents to choose active transportation. We know that we need to provide some safe infrastructure in order to do that, and it's a good investment. And the connections between communities benefit everyone, not just the specific 2 communities you're connecting. As we've shown you many times before, most surveys around North America show the population split into 10% who will ride a bike most anywhere, 30% who don't want to get on a bike and probably never will, in the 60% target population that we chase, which are the interested but certainly cautious. And the biggest holdback to them, the biggest barrier is usually the safety of the route they can take. That 60% represents, about 40,000 people in the Comox Valley. So it's a pretty significant number of people that we would be targeting to get on a bike. Obviously, they're not all going to choose to. And when we look at benefits, it's funny, we talk a lot about the environmental and carbon footprint, which are kind of greater good global benefits, and they're wonderful. But what really convinces someone to get on a bike are the local and the personal benefits. And, from your local perspective, from a tax perspective, there's fewer vehicles on the road, it's less congestion, less wear and tear. Lower maintenance costs, hopefully, and better health of the population means lower costs to put healthcare systems in place. From a personal viewpoint, this is the biggest driver to get somebody on a bike. And I'll be honest, it was the driver for me. I spent 17 years commuting in Calgary, and the money I saved on not paying downtown parking, not paying for gas, and not paying for an extra car, over 17 years, I've added it up roughly, it's over $250,000. So it's worthwhile to get on a bike. My bike didn't cost anywhere near $250,000. And that discretionary spending allows me to go spend it within the local community elsewhere. So it's a win-win-win, besides my own personal health improving. This is a bit of a regional connectivity rough map, and it shows an overall relative comfort level within between various communities. And you can see we've got between Cumberland and part of Courtney as red, but there's lots of other reds still on the map. From getting from West Courtney to East Courtney is difficult. Ryan Road is awful. Getting from Comox East Courtney up to the ferry is a challenge. Lerwick is a challenge. Condensory Road is a challenge. And these were all identified. And we really hope that we can work with you to help bring these. We know this is the first one, and it's going to be a challenge, but there's going to be benefits as we move along in these and turn more of the red and the orange into green. So when we quickly first looked at this as the Cycling Coalition, we looked at the biggest challenge to get between Cumberland and Courtney is the Inland Island Highway. And there were 4 places to cross it: Lake Trail, the tunnel, which has just most recently come up on Memorial Way, using the underpass, which is the Parkway, or the Royston Road small road connection. And we took a look at those 4 initially, and obviously the one that's existing that most people use is the highway underpass using the Parkway. It is, due to the speed and the volume of traffic, it's really daunting, and I will ride it, but I'm not real comfortable doing so. And the biggest thing, as you can see on the right, is 4 X's there. You have to deal with 4 on-off ramps, 2 on-ramps, 2 off-ramps, which are vehicles at speed in a lot of cases. So it's challenging, to say the least. And as you can see by this truck with trailer, taking his right-hand turn into the northbound off-ramp, not everybody is fully respectful of the place in space where a cyclist would be on the shoulder of the road. So narrowing the options down, when we looked at it, Bevan Lake Trail we found was just too far. It's an extra 4 or 5 kilometers for somebody to go, and it doesn't provide an option for people to access the South Courtney areas that many of them. Driftwood Mall is an example among many others. As stated, the Cycling Coalition, in talking to a lot of users, just can't support any improvement to the Parkway to use the route under the overpass. We don't believe that will attract any material new cyclists. We think it will improve the safety for the existing cyclists, but it'll be very, very marginal gains on anybody being added into the numbers, which is really the goal that we want to achieve, we think. So the remaining viable options were Royston Road small road combination or the Memorial Way by Maple Lake Tunnel. Whoops, too far. So these 2 routes you can see, and you can go through this detailed map if you want later, basically both start in downtown Cumberland, 4th and Dunsmuir, and end up at Cumberland Road and Parkway intersection. The bottom one that heads off to the right, they're all color coded. The orangish color shows you what is existing bikeways or very little improvement required. The pink is where we actually have to widen a road and add shoulders/bike lanes. The purple is where new pathway needs to go in. And there's a little bit of blue there where all we need to do is paint some bike lanes. The important ones are the pink and the purple, and they add up the distance to go small road. So the bottom and to the right option and take the trail past Slag and use small road from there is about 5.7 kilometers. To take the tunnel route and go the same, get the same endpoint is 4.7. So it's about 1 kilometer longer. It also involves a hill over the Inland Island Highway, which is a little bit daunting, and it involves 50% more construction. So if we look, a reminder of the multi-use pathway, the separation, the pathway is going to be where the green is. There's going to be 3 to 5 meter buffer. There's some challenges, and I'm going to walk you through those. If we obviously prefer the tunnel route. So we need to first, if you look at that purple line, parallel the off-ramp, the southbound off-ramp, work our way up to where that tunnel is. But you can see on the right-hand side, there's actually a nice little drainage draw, which the pathway can go down to meet up with Memorial Way. This is the green shading on the right, shows where the bike lane would come down roughly, and then go into the tunnel. So this is the west entrance of the tunnel. And I'm going to show you, if you look at the east entrance, there's a little more sunshine, so it's easier to see. You can see there's 2 sidewalks in there. They're about existing. They're about 1 meter wide, and the roadway is 5 meters wide. which would allow a small extension of say 0.3 meters on each side to create a roll down curb so the bikes could use the sidewalks and still leaving a driving lane that's 20% wider than a normal highway lane. Power, we'll need lighting in there. There's power poles and street lights on both sides of the tunnel already, so it's pretty readily accessible. The road Memorial Way past the cemetery until you get to the gravel pit is quite quiet and has some reasonable shoulders, so there's not much to be done on that road once you get through there. Gravel pits are always fun for a cyclist because they involve trucks and a lot of flying gravel. But you can see there's 3 pits in the area, and pit number 3 in the top left corner, which is north of Maple Lake, might use the tunnel if they were headed towards Courtney. The other 2 pits have access that makes far more sense direct to the parkway for them. There is already a yield sign that any traffic eastbound has to yield to the westbound for the trucks. It's not a very highly traveled route, truly. So in order to increase the number of people cycling, we really think you got to build infrastructure that's comfortable. We think that the tunnel, Memorial Tunnel, and is the best option to do that. And we really hope you'll support that when staff brings it forth later. I see I've got about a minute left, so I want to do some big thank yous. Mapping project, we've got our maps out. I've given some to staff here that'll put, there's 25 or so to be at the front desk. I've got a few if anybody wants one. Thank you so very much for your support in this. I think over 2 years, there was $4,000 in grants from CVRD to help produce this. There's a digital version online as well. CVRD was one of the initial instigators of helping us build bike racks, start our bike valet system, and we had a huge success at the air show. We had over 1,100 cyclists show up that day. It was really great to see. And we've got a grant this summer, $11,000 to double our bike rack volume. So we can do things like Nautical Days in Philburg, which both happen on the same weekend. Good time. Thank you.
Okay, right down to the moment.
Happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thanks. Just looking to see if, there we go, Director Brown.
Thanks so much for that. We missed you last night.
Yeah, I apologize
but no problem. I did share the report with my council, so they have access to this information as well. And I guess this question is more for staff. But you're welcome to have your input. So when we first looked at the plans, the one that goes under the tunnel, I didn't understand that it goes all the way down to connect with Cumberland Road. I thought it was going along the parkway. There's no map.
Sorry, I can't. I'm trying to move back, but I can't. There we go.
So once it comes out of the tunnel and goes down Memorial Way, I thought it was going right along the parkway, but you're saying
it will. Yes, the purple is new pathway, as I showed.
Okay.
I think it's maybe it's the next one here. Yeah, as I showed here. So the green is where the pathway would be beside the parkway. So there will be a shoulder still for vehicles, 3 to 5 meter separate buffer, and then a 4 meter pathway is what's spec'd, I believe.
Awesome.
No, that could change.
Yeah, there was some concern in the village that people would be coming out of Memorial Way and then want to cross to get over to the other. Yeah, we don't want that.
Yeah, no.
So this is great. Thank you. Thanks so much for your work on this.
And Director Carr.
Thanks, Mike. It was great seeing all the bikes at the air show. There were more bikes than cars parked for sure. Quick question, anything happening this Sunday?
Yes, sorry. I flipped by that very, very quickly. We are setting up Sunday at Point Homes to hand out free maps to anybody who would like one. And we're going to encourage people to use the new infrastructure that the town of Comox and CVRD have so graciously provided on what is affectionately known as the Lazo Loop, Lazo and Knight Road. So yes, come by 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., correct? And we might even have some sugary treats too.
Right, well, I'm not seeing any further questions. Thanks so much for the presentation. We always appreciate your input.
Thank you as always.
Okay, take care. All right, and we have a second delegation on green burials from Janet Odell, Dynamic Journey Doula. So please take your place at the mic. Thanks. It looks like it's already on and functioning.
Hello. No slides from me today. Just me. I'm Janet Odell. I'm an end-of-life practitioner, death doula. And I've spent the last few years out in the Valley and Vancouver Island educating and talking to the community members about end-of-life care. My purpose today is to speak about to you and request you save some land for green burial. We need some options here in Comox Valley. I've had numerous conversations with community members in regards to end of life wishes, and most want to be put in the land with no wood, with no concrete. They want to be natural. But they've complained that there's no options here other than Elk Falls, Denman Island, a little space in Cumberland, but you need to be a resident or there's a large fee. Or we've got Salt Spring. What is green burial? It's an eco-friendly, sustainable way to honor the dead. It's an alternative way in a traditional burial that's less destructive to the environment and promotes natural burial practices. Green burial requires biodegradable materials like wicker or cardboard and natural, non-toxic embalming fluids for the casket. The body is directly placed into the ground without a concrete vault or other barriers, allowing the body to decompose naturally. Natural burials are beneficial to our environment as they don't require use of large amounts of energy and resources. Additionally, they promote the natural cycle of life and don't involve using harsh chemicals that can seep into the ground and harm the environment. Green burial is an excellent option for those looking to reduce their carbon footprint and make more sustainable choice at end of life. I talk too quickly. I'll probably be quicker than the 10 minutes. So again, our green funeral options here on Vancouver Island and surrounding areas are the Woodlands at Green Oak Burial Park in Victoria, Natural Grove Green Burial Park Garden in Parksville, Salt Spring Island Natural Cemetery, Denman Island Natural Burial Cemetery, and Elk Falls Cemetery in Campbell River. I don't see Comox Valley. Our cemeteries here in Comox Valley, we have two, which is Cumberland Civic Cemetery on Poplar Drive and St. Andrew Cemetery on Dingwall. We need green burial options available for community members. Our demographics are changing. The infrastructure is consistently changing to meet those demands. I'm asking you today to help grant those final wishes for our loved ones, to save some land to create a natural and green option for end of life. This is a perfect way to save land from being developed into parking lots and or gravel pits or condo developments. We have a large boomer population. In the next 10 years, these people will be dying. Society is learning and adapting to change, and that is very consistent. Well, why can't we adapt to incorporate natural burials in our communities? Work with the landowners who may want to provide those private lands or their farms. Enable this to happen. If there's any zoning bylaws that need to be changed to enable it to happen, do so. Perhaps there's land in Moorville farming that has been donated and be utilized and changed to green space for burial. We have bike lanes, eco bikes, eco-friendly homes, and electric cars, but we have no green space for our dead. Have you thought about where you would like to lay to rest, or your children or your grandchildren? Because I'm sure their thoughts and opinions might be different than yours. Thank you for listening. Any questions?
All right, thanks, Janet. There are a couple of people wanting to ask questions. I'll start with Director Hillian.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for the presentation. when my old dad passed away, he was cremated, and I had a bag with his ashes in my sock drawer for about 5 years before I got organized to take it back to Scotland and scatter it on the river near where he was born. And so I know some people don't like the idea of cremation, but is that not more environmentally friendly that we basically scatter people's ashes and to the wind or to the trees up in the mountains rather than use precious land as a place for the dead to rest?
For sure. Lots of people have that as their wish, and that's about 40% of people in British Columbia have cremation. There's still 60% that wish to have their body of some sort put in the land. But of that percentage, I don't know exactly, but the amount of people that I've spoke to on the island are looking for more green ways, more environmentally friendly ways, so that they can leave a legacy behind for their loved ones.
And is there any legislative barrier to this, or is it just purely a matter of somebody dedicates some land for the purpose?
No, there would definitely need to be land surveying, testing. It has to be below a watershed, can't have any water or marsh around it for obvious reasons. Just to comment on ashes, the cremains, don't just put those underneath a tree because that will end up rotting your trees too acidic. Mix some natural manure in there with it, just saying.
And just one final point. What about the cemetery in Courtenay? Could there not be a section of that that was dedicated to green burial?
Sure, but look at our demographics and the boomers that are coming. We have, no offense, but a great tsunami coming. Where is everybody going to go? And the more people that are coming, the more people that are dying, their options are becoming limited, right? We don't want to become like Ottawa, where their caskets are 5 layers deep and they're still paying $110,000 for that spot.
Okay, thanks very much.
You're welcome. Any more questions?
And Director Kerr.
Thank you. And just disclosure, I have a green burial in my will, and I assumed I'd be in Victoria at some point because that's the closest large area. And cremation actually is quite high in greenhouse gas emissions. It's like over 500 pounds of carbon dioxide per cremation. So a quick question. Have you approached the two cemeteries here locally about whether they would set aside space for green burials?
I have had colleagues that have spoken with the cemeteries and are working within their organizations, yes. But I'm looking for more space dedicated for natural burial.
Thanks. And Director McCollum.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for coming and presenting this idea and this gap in services. One thing I wanted you to just expand on, I think I understand because I know of someone who recently did a green burial in their family, and I learned a lot from hearing about that. But from what I understand, part of that process is you don't really own a spot. You get to go and lay your loved one to rest, and you would visit the park, but you don't have like a guarantee of 30 years where the land isn't disturbed. So maybe you want to just explain a little bit about how a green burial site works in practice.
This is why we need more options, right? You definitely pre-plan, you can pre-book and prepay for all your cemetery plots and all of that. This is part of the process of, if we have a space that can be put in to plan of going, how many can we foresee? How much can this space hold? Not like a waiting list, unfortunately, but it is, because everybody is going to die. I'm looking at thinking of it's going to sustain itself because it's just a natural forest, right? People come in and hand dig those holes, and the rocks are put back, or moss and whatever, ferns, and the people, their loved ones, have a place to come, right? It's like if you bury your dog up the mountain and you put rocks on it and you go visit, you don't own that space. You just have a space to remember.
Yeah, thanks for explaining that. One question I had is, traditionally, although maybe not so much current in more recent times, that churches did provide cemetery services for their members. But churches do own land well, across our community. And I'm wondering if you've spoken to any, church leaders or church groups as to whether or not there's an interest in doing something like this on vacant land that's owned by a church community.
I think for the members that I've spoken to within the church community, they've not expressed that strong of an interest because they're in a bit of an older generation and the wiggle room is not as wide as perhaps mine.
Fair enough. And then the other thing I was going to ask is whether you're planning on coming to the municipalities as well, because there's various jurisdictions as to who has access to public lands, and we're just one of those places. So
yeah, no, I've looked at the different zones in the areas that are below the water line and there's no marshes, and we're looking at Black Creek, Merville, Union Bay, Royston areas, right? Because it's about what's already there, what concrete village is already there in a sense. It's not appeasable to the heart to go, I want to go visit my loved one when there's a big building right there or plan to be there. So just.
right. Yeah, that's helpful. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And Director Hardy.
Yeah, thanks, Janet, for the presentation. I guess my comment or question would go towards staff and potentially the Regional Parks Service Committee. I'm just wondering, again, we're in the process right now of developing a Regional Parks Service strategy with regards to land acquisition down the road. And I'm just wondering, again, when we start looking at acquiring parks down the road for cultural purposes, if something like this particular concept would fall under that particular realm. So I just throw the question out to staff right now with regards to, is it something that we should be maybe considering in the strategic planning for the regional parks? Thanks.
Thanks for the question. You're right, we're in the midst of the strategic planning for our regional park service, and I think it's something that could be considered. To date, through the various pieces of work to develop that draft plan, I don't believe it has arisen as a primary topic, but it is something that could be considered. If the board is interested in CERD staff taking a further look at this in whatever manner, whether it be on the land use and zoning side of things, or in respect of any of our other services, we'd look for a resolution from the board at a subsequent meeting. Yeah.
Thanks, CEO. And Director Morin.
Great, thanks, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I know we haven't had an update about the cemetery, the Courtney Cemetery, in a while at Courtney Council, but quite a while back we did, and we asked quite a few questions around capacity and sort of the future needs and all of that. And one of the things I remember that was brought up is that with more newcomers, often there are folks, different cultures who actually prefer burial over cremation, and that we may see a shift actually to more folks wanting burial. So yeah, I just think it's definitely something it would be useful to have more of a conversation around, because I was also curious about not going to the municipalities, but now I see where you're coming from. You want, a large piece of, or a substantial piece of property that's in a that has some room for maybe some expansion. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that up, that we did have a discussion way back when, and we did, I believe, speak about the potential of green burials as well at that time, but maybe we need to revisit that. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thanks for that, Director Morin. I'm not seeing any other lights, and Janet, you may well be aware that we don't make decisions or take actions on the evening we receive a delegation, but we appreciate your time, and clearly it's got people thinking. So thanks very much.
Thanks for listening.
Pleasure. All right, and next up, the Comox Valley Farmers Institute, and we have Nikki Whitaker, the admin assistant, Jan Slump, the president, Etienne Cote, the treasurer, and Ali Woods, director. And I don't know if you guys are going to all go together or take turns, but let's go ahead.
They're here to help answer any questions or anything. So good afternoon, members of the CVRD board and staff. Thank you for providing us an audience today as a delegation representing the Comox Valley Farmers Institute. I guess I don't need to reintroduce everybody here, but yeah, we're a group of local farmers sitting here today. My name is Nikki Whitaker. I'm the CVFI's administrative assistant. We come to you today with what we hope is a fairly simple request, and I'll just begin with a little background. The Comox Valley Farmers Institute is committed to agriculture, food, farming, farmers here in the Comox Valley. Part of the greater family of BC Farmers Institutes. We're a volunteer-driven nonprofit organization incorporated under the Farmers and Women's Institute Act. And we have a long and rich history of proudly supporting agriculture in the Comox Valley since 1873. And it was our 150th anniversary last year. And I believe we'll be seeing some of you next Tuesday on our elected officials tour. I'm very excited about it. So one of the services that the CVFI provides to the local and rural farming population is owning and maintaining several pieces of farming equipment and implements that are available to rent and borrow for a small fee. I believe we have seven pieces of equipment and implements right now. The equipment co-op exists to support local farms and farmers, and it serves as an important resource to many of our local farmers as it's equipment that they don't necessarily have to own themselves. It's often used by many of our smaller and just getting started farms that don't necessarily have a lot of capital assets due to cost because equipment's really pricey. We've successfully managed the equipment co-op for many years, and it's widely supported, well used by the farm community. And then income that comes in from renting equipment, it generally gets put back into it to help maintain the equipment and pay for insurance and stuff like that. So for some time now, for quite a while, we've been discussing and making moves to secure the purchase of a new manure lime spreader combination implement to join our equipment co-op. And our rationale behind this prospective purchase is, as I already mentioned, to support local farms and farmers, and particularly those smaller ones that don't necessarily have all of the equipment they may want or need due to the large capital costs. Out of our desire to support farmers in improving their soil fertility via the application of lime to our very acidic soils that we have here on Vancouver Island, and as well via the application of composted manure to the land. And finally, out of our desire to support and help farmers both save money and potentially reduce usage of chemical fertilizer, thereby helping reduce climate change impacts. So to date, we've obtained four quotes from four different vendors. Our membership is very supportive of the purchase and has authorized to move forward in the process. However, they have indicated a preference to seek some funding to support this purchase because it's a pretty significant one for our little group. Based on quotes, we're looking at roughly in the range of $60,000. So we're leaning towards a current manufacturer who's prepared to custom build a prototype machine for us. And we really like the idea of supporting local, having someone local who can support the equipment in terms of repairs and parts over time. And then, you know, with luck, this prototype actually has the full potential of leading to further manufacturing in the valley as well. So this gets me to the purpose that we're here. Very recently, the opportunity to apply for the Farm Credit Canada Agri-Spirit Fund worth up to $25,000 was brought to our attention. And this grant is particularly intriguing to us because it's open to nonprofit organizations such as ourselves. And then it has direct ties to enriching lives in the rural community, initiatives that support agriculture and food, and is specifically for capital projects such as the one we're proposing. And these don't just come along every day. So we believe ourselves well poised to potentially be beneficiaries of this fund. So in looking through the application, it's indicated that due to there being no national registration for nonprofit organizations, Farm Credit Canada requires them to partner with either a local municipal, territorial, or provincial body, First Nations, Métis, or Inuit government, or community or registered charity to show that there's community support for the project. So further, if our project is selected, the partner, it says that the partner must agree by co-signing the funding agreement and receiving the contributed money on our behalf. So the application for this fund, it closed on May 15th. So we did go ahead and apply for it with some CBRD staff support. And we indicated via tick box, because that's all that was in the application at that point, asking for that we're a nonprofit partnering with a municipal body and indicating the Comox Valley Regional District. Obviously, if we weren't to go ahead and partner, then we would just withdraw the application, but we wanted to meet that deadline. So if we're successful in obtaining the maximum funding that we requested of $25,000, that would account for 42% of the total amount that we're prepared to spend on the manure lime spreader. And just so you're aware, we also just, like as of last Friday, applied for $10,000 from the Rural Community Grant as well. So you'll be seeing that at some point. So our ask to you, the CVRD board, is if you would be willing to partner with us and support us in our application towards the FCC Agri-Spirit funding. As mentioned, this would specifically entail co-signing the funding agreement if and when the time comes, and receiving the contributed money on our behalf if we're successful. There'd be no additional costs or capacity required of the CVRD other than running the funds. I'm not exactly sure how it works completely, but probably running the funds through your finance department if we're successful. We've been instructed that we'll receive an email come this fall if we're successful in our funding request. And at that point, the CVRD would be engaged as a potential partner. So yeah, as a capital project that will directly benefit local farms and farmers, we hope that the CVRD board will consider our request for partnership and thereby directly support farmers, farm success, and the local agricultural economy. Thanks for hearing us out, and any questions?
Great, thanks, Nikki, appreciate that. And I see there's already a question from Director Grieve.
Thanks, Nikki. Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Always great to see you. So just to be clear here, I mean, the board does a lot of flow through grants as it is, especially for different social planning exercises and bank around health and things like that. But in this case, you already applied May 15th, was it?
Yes, the deadline was May 15th, and I think we applied on the 14th or something like that.
So it's already in the hopper.
Yes.
And then you get notified in the fall,
yeah,
whether or not you're successful. So at that point, would you need like a letter of intent or a MOU or something along that lines?
I honestly don't even
Yeah.
know what we would need
How
at
official
this
does it
point.
have to be? You know?
It didn't, there was no documentation at the point of application saying what comes next. It just said you had to tick off who you were partnering with, or
Okay.
like how you were choosing to partner. And then you had to indicate who you were planning on partnering with. And that's it. There
So
was-
probably something.
So I'm assuming if,
Driven up.
yeah, I'm assuming if you were successful, that then you would get further instruction saying, okay, now you need to get in touch with your partner and here's our instructions, and
Oh,
then
okay.
we would do that.
Okay, so you just want a tacit nod at this point if.
Yeah, we didn't want to go ahead and be like, yeah, we're partnering with the CVRD when maybe we're not, right?
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, that's good to know. So it's 25K, nothing to sneeze at.
No, and you know, maybe 25K is the max you could apply for.
Oh,
So
okay.
we applied for the max. It doesn't necessarily mean we would get it or any of it. Who knows?
Well,
Gotta try. 'Cause
nothing ventured, nothing gained.
yeah, there's not very many grants and funds out there for capital projects.
No,
So yeah.
it's true. Okay, so I guess my question to staff is how would we bring this back? Are we going to bring it back at the next board meeting like we do when we review the requests from delegations?
I think, and as the chair mentioned earlier, the board typically doesn't make decisions on delegations on the night of.
Yes.
And so at the subsequent board meeting on the covering agenda, there'd be some sort of an action there identifying a response for the board to take, whether it be to support the request as noted here, or if more information is needed, we would want to seek that out. I do understand there's some alignment already, and you've been in touch with Lisa Kilpatrick, one of our
Yes.
staff members.
Yeah.
So I think there is some alignment there, but we would want to understand what that flow through looks like, because often there are obligations on the partner organization, and we just want to understand what those are. So for tonight, I would suggest you ask any questions you have, and then we would have some follow-up on a subsequent board agenda.
Well, I think everybody knows where I stand. Turn it over to the other directors.
Okay, thanks, Director Grieve, and I'll turn it over to Director Grant.
Yeah, thanks, Nikki. That's a good presentation. Just wondering, because we would be co-signers, if your grant money doesn't come through, would you pull out of this project? Because if not, we're on the hook, right? That's what
Yeah,
co-signing is.
no, the Farmers Institute at this stage, you know, we're still in the final decision making. I think I can speak fairly confidently that we're likely going ahead with this project with or without grant money. It's a lot of money out of our bottom line. And to be quite fair, or to be quite frank about the bottom line of the Farmers Institute, like we try to keep a certain balance in our bank account because we float some pretty big projects through the year. Like, for example, we floated we brought in a lime barge last year with 3,000 tons of lime that went out to various farms and got put out on the land. And to float the money for that 3,000 tons of lime and all of the logistics and transportation and barges and everything that went along with that project, we were over $100,000 in. And so we try to keep a bank balance, and quite frankly, if we spend all of this money on this implement, our bank balance is not quite there for future projects. So that's why one of the reasons we're looking for funding, along with all the other reasons.
Okay, I just want to be sure that if we're not going to be on the hook for this,
No.
should something go wrong, because you guys could actually finance it yourselves if you had to,
Yes,
correct? Okay,
yes,
thank you.
100%.
All right, thanks for that
Can I just
clarification.
add
Yeah,
on to this?
CEO.
Sorry, just to add on to that, and my understanding is that the request would be to sign on as a partner to the grant application,
Yes.
not the asset.
No, it's basically just because I don't completely understand how the grants work with nonprofits, but my understanding is they can't give the money directly to us. It's a flow through.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks for that clarification, CEO. And Director Hardy.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the presentation, Nikki. I guess one thought that comes to my mind is, again, one of the key priorities for the Comox Valley Regional District is supporting the agriculture sector. And to me, moving forward, it would make sense to support this particular project based upon it being a key priority for the Comox Valley Regional District. Another thought that comes to mind as well, and I know we've had several conversations about it over the last couple of years, if not more, is again having an agriculture service in place. And we've talked about it, but we still don't have anything in place as of yet. And I know through the review of the agriculture plan that is something that has come up, is again maybe getting that agriculture service in place. And to me, having that agriculture service and having some funds available for different projects like this, to me, would make sense. And it is unfortunate we don't have that service in place as of yet. So perhaps that's a conversation for another day, whether we have an electoral area services committee and then move it towards the CVRD board. I'm not quite sure how that process works. So I just throw it out there for potential agenda items, I guess, down the road. Thanks.
Just really quickly, I could say that we have a draft agricultural plan that's been in community for some time now, and it's come to the committee, Electoral Area Services Committee, and possibly the board over the past number of months. But we are anticipating that to come back to the Electoral Area Services Committee, I believe, in June. Yeah, I'm seeing a thumbs up on that. So it is on
that idea of the service might be in there.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack with what that might be, but certainly the draft plan is scheduled to come to the June Electoral Areas Committee.
Thanks. And my understanding from the discussion here is that we don't need to have a service in order to be able to play a role in this particular request. Okay, I don't see any further questions. Thanks for the time, Nikki. It was a really,
Thank you.
and you obviously
Appreciate it.
again spurred a lot of conversation, and we'll be considering this at a later meeting. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to move on to reports, and we have the Active Transportation Network Plan Cumberland to Courtney Connector as the next item, and I'll pass it over to our CAO. Thank you. Moved and seconded, so we have it on the table for receipt.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. We have two staff members joining us at the table. Robin Holm is our Manager of Long Range Planning and Sustainability, and Dylan is our Planner 1 Long Range. And I think Dylan's going to introduce this PowerPoint, and then between Dylan, Robin, and the rest of your team, we'll be able to facilitate the discussion. So Dylan, over to you.
Thank you very much for the introduction, James. Through the CAO and the chair, to the directors and the board. At the April 23rd board meeting last month, staff received direction to continue working with project partners and stakeholders on the Cumberland to Courtney Connector in order to decide on a preferred alignment from the two options presented, which you can see on the map on your screen now. Option 1 using the Memorial Way Tunnel to go under Highway 19, whereas option 2 goes under the highway overpass along the Comox Valley Parkway. Staff facilitated 2 meetings with Village of Cumberland staff, one of which involved Modi and the other involved the Cycling Coalition. These meetings included an assessment of the 2 options in more detail, as well as Small Road, given the interest in this option raised at the April 23rd board meeting. Accessing Small Road continues to be challenging for many reasons. These are outlined in Appendix B of the staff report, but fulsome conversations did happen around that, as well as around options 1 and 2 that allowed for a greater understanding of each option's challenges and opportunities. This conversation was underpinned by an acknowledgement of the top 2 Active Transportation Network Plan objectives, ensuring that everyone has access to active transportation regardless of their age or ability, and facilitating a mode shift so as to see a reduction in transportation-related GHG emissions throughout the Comox Valley. This involves building a bike path that doesn't just make it safer for those who already cycle the parkway, but one that makes it so safe that people who don't currently bike between Cumberland and Courtney now see it as a viable option. At the meeting with Modi, CVRD and village staff also received an update on their work plan for this area. A traffic impact assessment we learned will be done for the Highway 19 interchange area within 2 years, though it's unknown whether any improvements will occur or what they might look like if they do. This uncertainty makes pursuing this project through the highway interchange area more challenging and uncertain from perspectives of cost, permit approvals, and construction management. But village staff did identify a need to increase cyclist safety along the most direct route for those who may want to continue using that route. So while option 1 provides the best course for pursuing an all ages and abilities path, there are cyclists that currently cycle the parkway and may continue to do so even if a path is built. Advocating to Modi for the inclusion of active transportation infrastructure through their assessment that they have planned can encourage greater protections for those cyclists. We also heard from the Cycling Coalition in our meetings on their preference for option 1, preferring to avoid the on and off ramps altogether and removing cyclists from the parkway for as much as possible. Lastly, and very importantly, these continued conversations allowed for consensus building among project partners and stakeholders. Staff at the CVRD, Village, and Modi, and representatives from the Cycling Coalition are in agreement in pursuing option 1, complemented by continued advocacy to Modi. The preferred alignment will take cyclists underneath Highway 19 through the Memorial Way Tunnel, which has the benefits of avoiding conflict points at the highway on and off ramps, fully removing cyclists from the parkway for over a kilometer, and using and improving upon existing infrastructure to introduce possible cost savings and phasing opportunities. These phasing options, as well as significant tunnel safety improvements, will be a focal point of the design process. So the map on the right of your screen shows the full length of the proposed route, being just over 4.5 kilometers in length. Again, for the purposes of this project, it begins where the existing bike lanes leaving or entering the village of Cumberland begin or end, and goes to the City of Courtenay municipal boundaries along Cumberland Road. The cross-section at the bottom of the screen shows a typical width for the part of the path that would be along the parkway, and we do expect to achieve 5.5 to 8 meters of physical separation from the nearest vehicle lane on the parkway. And we'll be exploring further options to vegetate and landscape that buffer as well. Next steps for us will involve preparing concept drawings and a cost estimate based on the preferred alignment to support a BC Active Transportation grant later this year, pursuing implementation agreements with the Village of Cumberland, City of Courtenay, and Modi to confirm funding, jurisdiction, maintenance, and asset management, exploring a phased approach to project implementation, recognizing the limitations on current grant opportunities, and exploring alternative funding strategies beyond grants. As mentioned, complementary to this is a two-pronged advocacy effort, one to the more local levels of Modi, asking them and encouraging them to include active transportation infrastructure in their capital projects within the valley, and one to higher level Modi staff to identify funding gaps and implementation challenges for these larger scale projects. With all of this in mind, and to keep the project moving forward, staff are recommending that concept drawings for the Cumberland to Courtenay connector be prepared based on the preferred alignment presented today. Again, in order to support a BC Active Transportation grant application in the fall of 2024, and that the CVRD work with our colleagues at the Village of Cumberland to advocate to Modi for the inclusion of pedestrian and cycling improvements in their assessment of the Highway 19 interchange at the Comox Valley Parkway. As James mentioned, my manager Robin is here and a couple other staff as well to answer any questions you might have.
Thanks very much. And we do have a question, starting with Director.
Yeah, thanks. I'm just kind of trying to understand the concepts here and where the City of Courtenay falls within this particular project. Are they directing funds or resources towards this project down the road?
Through the CAO and the chair to Director Hardy. At this time, we are still working through and trying to identify all of those details, including the funding contributions, identifying the responsibilities and roles of maintenance and operations. We're currently in the process of drafting a staff report, which we'll be bringing forward in early summer that will be getting into that level of detail. But I can say that this project was identified as a top priority in the Active Transportation Network Plan implementation strategy, and it has been identified as a regional route of significance. And with that, we're trying to try to provide a very key regional connection between the communities in the valley. And so with that, an implementation agreement would essentially identify those roles and responsibilities and flesh out those maintenance and funding contributions. But it really is a regional approach to regional problems such as improving the connectivity, affordability, climate change, all of those really big regional problems. We're trying to take a regional approach with that. And so with the understanding that this alignment begins in Cumberland and really finishes in Courtenay, it's really important that all jurisdictions be involved in that implementation agreement to really identify who is responsible for what and really identifying that this is a regional project.
Thanks, Robin. And we'll go next to Director Brown.
Thanks so much for your continued work on this and for continuing to look at Small Road and just finally getting us to move away from that, really, that attachment. So we had a conversation at council last night about advocacy because our, UBCM is coming up. And so I just want to make sure that we're working together because I think we're going to be looking for a staff meeting with Modi around this topic. So whether we do that regionally, because Cumberland also wants to talk to Modi about the interchange land. So whether we want to do those two meetings together or separate them out, we'll have to, that's a conversation for another time, but appreciate that collaboration. And just thinking about the timing and how long this project will take, I guess we'll go through and look at phasing at some point. But theoretically, we could have gravel paths coming in first and paving could be a second phase versus breaking it, like taking it into chunks, but then also getting some sort of quick and dirty access with gravel if we need to first, and then paving could be a second phase, maybe.
Through the CEO and the chair to Director Brown, I think we'd be working with our consultants to be able to advise us on what would be the most efficient way to approach the phasing. We might find that it's better to look at just considering that we're going to have land surveyed, we're going to have all the designs essentially engineered, and that it may be more economical to approach it in actual physical phases with based on sections of the alignment rather than taking an approach to doing the entire alignment. But we'll report back on that once we've had an opportunity to move forward with our conceptual drawings.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Great, thanks. And Director McCollum.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks for this updated report. It's I'm happy to see where the alignment landed and that we're focusing our efforts on that route at this point. My question was just around the next steps slide and picking up on the question that Director Hardy had, that we're going to look towards an implementation agreement with the village, the city, and Modi. But there is area A that this moves. I mean, looking at the map, this route is in the village of Cumberland and area A, and then it stops at the city. And of course, the city would need to develop a connection to where that map stops. That would be an important piece. So I guess I wonder why the next step isn't engaging with the city on that piece, and why, if we're taking a regional approach, are we not, are we not looking to engage with the ESC? I assume that that's how, maybe staff have thoughts on this. And then the other piece of, sorry to ramble a little bit here, but the Modi, we're not expecting to confirm a funding agreement with them at this stage. I wouldn't think that we're really going to focus on the active transportation grant would be probably our most likely way to get some funding through the ministry. Yeah, so just wanted to understand that a bit better.
Through the CEO and the chair, to Director McCollum, I'll try and answer these questions. First, I'll start with the implementation agreement. We definitely can reach out to the city of Courtenay and continue the discussions we've had in terms of integrating this alignment with the existing cities network. It was always our intention to make sure that that is a seamless connection, recognizing there may be improvements made on the city side just to ensure that there's consistency. And those are some of the questions we still have in terms of that Cumberland Road and transitioning the city. So that definitely can be one of our immediate next steps. The development of the implementation agreement, I think at this point, it's just really identifying how we're going to work together on this project. We've never really undertaken any sort of major active transportation infrastructure project like this. So it's really the first of its kind. And so there's a lot still to work through. But the implementation agreement will really outline who's responsible for what those funding contributions could look like, and really confirming the maintenance and operation obligations. And in terms of the funding piece, yes, the BC Active Transportation Grant Program is going to be available for intake in the fall, but staff will also be exploring other funding opportunities, and whether that be through other grant programs or advocating to the ministry that there is this project, and essentially flagging it for them that there is a major funding gap in terms of what's available, and then flagging that this, with the scale of this project, given that it is such a regional project, that we do need additional funds to be able to undertake it.
Yeah, I agreed. I think the BC Active Transportation grant system as it stands is not going to get us close enough to what we need. And this is a major gap in transportation infrastructure. So yeah, I agree that the approach is probably going to need to go beyond just that granting system if we're going to see success there. I did have another question just about the second recommendation and the report. Just given that, the priority of this project and the recognition that this is something that we would like to see in the, not too distant future. And I am looking at this second recommendation that pedestrian and cycling improvements be included in any improvements or upgrades to Highway 19 interchange or the Comox Valley Parkway. We're not aware of any planned upgrades at this time, are we? Or is that included because we are expecting Modi to do some work in that zone?
Yeah, I appreciate the ability to clarify that through the CAO and the director and the chair to the director. We heard from Modi that they have plans within their 2025 fiscal year to do a traffic assessment of the interchange intersections, the on and off ramp areas specifically. That could be about 2 calendar years, within 2 calendar years from now, essentially. They just began their 2024 fiscal year. And there is no guarantee that from that, that actual roadworks or improvements will be made. But we know that they are looking at it and that they are assessing whether that's needed to be done. They've talked about possible improvements for the area given the increase in traffic. So if they do end up following through with that, we just want to have conversations with them along the way so that they also consider active transportation elements to their designs.
Okay, and Director Greavy did have your light on and managed to turn it off, so I will just put you in first and then Director Brown. Let's see if we got it right. There we go.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and to the staff. Now, when the way I see it, when the path leaves Cumberland, is it going to be on the north side of Cumberland Road or the south side? Because the north side is Area C. You keep hearing Area A, but it's all. So I'm thinking it's going to mostly be in Area C, going down until it gets to the boundary with Courtenay, and then it turns municipal. Now, my experience with Modi on these things has been, lukewarm at best. Although, there's no time like an election to shake that money tree. Just a question about the road width, because a lot of these right of ways, like the approach to the Condensary Bridge, are exceedingly small by today's standards. So I'm wondering, is it a 10-meter ROW, or is it a 15 or a 50-meter ROW? I think the new ones are 50, aren't they nowadays? Pretty much when they build stuff. So I'm just wondering, is there room there without slamming into telephone poles to actually, have enough room to make a separated pathway?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Through the CAO and the chair to the directors, we believe there is room. I don't have the actual number of the road right-of-way width off the top of my head. But you are right. It's the north side that's in Area C and the south side that's in Area A. We would look through the design process, working with our consultants, as to what makes the most sense given that very local context and that slightly constrained road width along Cumberland Road. As you approach the municipal boundaries, of course, the city has those buffered painted lanes on both sides. And we do have a pretty substantial intersection with lights that's controlled at the Comox Valley Parkway and Cumberland Road intersection. So we will have to, through the design process, see if it actually makes sense to have cyclists cross the road there and then bike along the Cumberland Road on both sides, or whether it makes sense to keep the path on the one side. But we would be looking to work with Modi as well as the Village of Cumberland, recognizing that a small part of that is in their jurisdiction as well, as to what we can achieve with the width and whether expanding or widening that is possible.
Thanks for the opportunity for follow-up. My recollection is that the hydro poles are on the south side. And if that's the case, then it would make more sense to use the north side. Otherwise, that you're losing a lot of your valuable right of way because it's very limited at best. So, and of course, where are the ditches, so I guess this is all stuff we're gonna have to work out, but
Yeah, I was just gonna jump in. Those are pretty specific details.
yeah, but it is.
The intent is the recommendations here around support.
Yeah, so I'm just curious about the size of the right of way, because as you say, we get emails and letters all the time about the Condensary Bridge and why can't we make it wider? But of course, ditches are here and here, and it's very narrow, and that's all we can do.
Okay, thanks, Director Green. Thanks, Robin and Dylan, and Director Brown.
Thanks. I just wanted to briefly respond to Director McCollum's comments around the second recommendation, because I have similar concerns around conflating our strategy with Modi and just making sure we're effective. But I think it's really important for us to also speak to them, given their current review of that intersection and given the accident rate that is happening there, that it's worthwhile looking at the interchange as well. And I think we are definitely going to continue to have cyclists that use the connector all the way down. So either all the way into Courtney or down to Cumberland Road and then left. So yeah, just if staff have any comments around whether or not how we approach Modi, that would be helpful, maybe in a different conversation later.
Only that the comments are all valid, of course, and I think the recommendation staff would still stand behind the second recommendation in trying to speak with Modi about the improvements and recognizing not to conflate the two. It's also consistent with the board's advocacy strategy and approaching the ministers at UBCM and having these conversations. And I appreciate your comments, Director Brown, on the village's efforts around a staff-based meeting at UBCM. That's also on our list. So I'll connect with your CAO and make sure that we're collaborating on that effort too.
All right, seeing no further questions, we have a receipt motion on the table. We'll just dispense with that. Any opposed? Seeing none, and their recommendation and seconded. And any opposed to recommendation 1? Passed unanimously. Recommendation 2? Moved and seconded. Any opposed? And that passes unanimously as well. Thanks very much, folks. Next, we'll move on to performance review and compensation administration policy. This is for receipt. Okay, that's been moved and seconded. And I guess because this comes from me, I will sort of lead off. I just want to start off by thanking Director Kerr and our CAO. The three of us worked collaboratively on trying to re-envision this. We looked at local examples, talking to other regional districts about how they were doing the work they're doing. And I think we've come up with a framework that certainly makes a lot of sense to us. It's a fairly simple, I think the grid that kind of maps it out for you for a standard term is that every year there would be a self-assessment by the CAO, which would then be, there would be a consultant who would come in and follow up with interviews with the directors and the senior management team. And a report would be produced, which would be discussed in camera. And an innovation which came from the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District was to have some check-ins, 2 check-ins, smaller check-ins over the course of the year, which would be restricted in camera with the CAO and directors. And then in the second year of a term, a much more comprehensive review, which would involve members of the hospital board, the solid waste management board, all of the CAOs and the Comox First Nation. And clearly we're in a bit of an unusual situation right now because James is just coming on board and it's off kilter with the election cycle. So the plan for this year, as you probably know from the email that James sent out last week about Michael Shoup, is for a process to occur which involves the directors and the CAOs. And then next year, being the third year of the cycle, we will do what would usually happen in the second year, which is the big all-inclusive review. So that's kind of the broad strokes of things. If people have questions, I'll endeavor to answer them. And if not, I'm sure that James or Jay could assist me with that. Dr. Hillian.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for the work involved in this. I'm generally supportive. I'm just curious what the budget implications are.
Ask James to weigh in on that.
Sure. The looking to an external consultant to assist with this, it's on the order of I think between $4,000 and $10,000 on an annual basis to conduct the interviews, to prepare the reports, and then perform a fair amount of follow-up effort to see those reports implemented. And that's money that's accounted for through your existing budgets.
Relatively small change in the grand scheme of things. Thanks very much.
And it seemed to us that having that professional assistance to ensure like a clear, clean policy made a lot of sense. And we're fortunate that the person we're working with is, again, very affordable contractor. Any other, if seeing no other questions, oh, Dr. Brown.
Yeah, really appreciate this. It looks really good. The only thing that I'm not seeing, and maybe it's here and I'm just not seeing it, but some sort of development plan or anything around that, like in further training or like developing a development plan and following through on that.
It's envisaged that at the conclusion of each year's annual, like the CEO would submit a self-assessment, we'd talk to the board and the management team, and that would be a resulting report which come from me or from the chair. And that would be what would inform the CAO's sort of development actions.
Okay, great.
And James, I don't know if you want to add anything to that characterization. Okay.
Thanks.
All right, seeing no other, any questions for you, Director Arbor, online? Bueller?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right. So we've got a motion for receipt on the table. Any opposed? Seeing none, and there's a recommendation. Okay, moved and seconded. Any opposed? Great, and that passes unanimously. Thanks, folks. Feels like a real step forward for us. Next is Committee of the Whole Elected Officials Forum, the minutes from April 16th. Moved and seconded. Any opposed? Seeing none, that passes unanimously. So ESC May 6th minutes for receipt. Moved and seconded. Thank you. Any opposed? Seeing none. And there is a recommendation. All right. And staff, did you want to speak to that at all?
there's any questions, we'd certainly be able to speak to. This is a recommendation coming out of the Electrical Area Services Committee meeting, and I'm looking at Alana if there was anything to add. It comes through our planning service. Nothing specific.
Okay,
But
great.
if you have questions, certainly we can.
All right, not seeing any questions. The recommendations moved and seconded. It's areas A, B, and C. All those in favor? Just to mix it up.
In favor.
Great. All right, and that passes unanimously. Next, we're looking at the Comox Valley sewage minutes for May 7th for receipt. Moved and seconded. Any opposed? Passes. Water Committee, May 7th for receipt. Moved and seconded. None opposed. Thank you. That passed unanimously. Okay, moved and seconded. That's the Rec Commission from May 7th. Any questions? Any opposed? That passes. And then we go. So we're moving May 9th minutes from the EASC. That's moved and I believe seconded. Any questions? Anyone opposed? That passes, and we move on to bylaws and resolutions for first, second, and third reading. This is bylaw number 764, Comox Valley Regional District Weed Control Regulations bylaw.
First and second reading, 764.
Thank you very much. Moved and seconded. This is a vote of the areas. Any opposed? Seeing none, and now for third reading. Moved and then seconded. Thank you. Any opposed? And that passes. Now we're going for, let's see, Comox Valley Regional District Bylaw Adjudication Ticketing Bylaw 679 for first and second readings. That's been moved, and I think our Director Grant seconded. Okay, and it's again a vote at the areas. Any opposed? All right, and now the same bylaw but for third reading. Okay. Third is first and seconded, and any opposed? Okay, and that passed unanimously. We're just going to keep doing this for a while. This is municipal ticket bylaw number 104, amendment number 26, first and second reading. Thank you. Seconded. Perfect. Any opposed? Seeing none. And for third reading? Okay, moved and seconded. Any opposed? Again, it's the areas. Okay, and that passes. And now we go to the Merville Fire Protection Service Establishment bylaw number 484. And this is a vote of, thank you. And this is a vote of the entire board. Any opposed? Perfect. And for third reading, moved and seconded. Thank you. Whole board again. Any opposed? Seeing none. And next is bylaw number 828. Rural Comox Valley zoning bylaw number 520, amendment number 17 on residential density. That's for first and second readings. Okay, any questions? Seeing none. Any opposed? That passes. And again for third reading, thank you. Moved. Wasn't got there. So someone must want to second this. Okay, great. Otherwise we just all grinds to a halt. Okay. And any opposed? That passes unanimously. And for third reading, thank you. And seconded, and that's for the areas. And for third reading, and any opposed? Seeing none. Next, electoral areas park regulation bylaw number 103, and that's for first and second reading. This vote of the areas. Moved. Thank you very much. And any questions? Any opposed? Passes. And for third reading. Okay, thank you. And any opposed? Okay, and this includes area D. We do not have Director Rice here, it looks like. Okay, all right. So that's the Northern Fire Services Area Administration bylaw. First and second have been moved. It's a vote of areas B and C then. Any opposed? And D theoretically. And for third, okay. And any opposed? Seeing none. Okay, so now we're going to move into final adoption. And this is the Bain Sound Community Facilities Support Service Establishment bylaw number 636 for adoption. That's been moved and seconded. This is a vote of everyone. Anyone opposed? Passes unanimously. And new business, water management for agriculture. This is, thank you. This is a letter from Director Grief regarding consideration of a resolution to UBCM the convention advocating better support for farmers and ranchers and improving water management, supply and storage amidst the changing climate and provincial regulatory framework for receipt. And be happy to hear from Director Grieve on that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. It's very self-explanatory. A lot of confused information coming from various ministries, a lot of very onerous regulations, and the need to have professional services that are in very short supply. Long and short of the whole thing is that the water in some of the smaller farms is being regulated and in some cases denied to certain farmers, which of course negates terrible hardship for farming, especially in light of the fact that almost 30% of the farms in Comox Valley turn profits of less than $10,000. So it's a very interesting conundrum. This was originally going to come forward to AVICC as a late resolution, but being that it didn't have that much in the way of new information, it was thought better to leave it for UBCM and see if it resonates with our interior brothers and sisters up in the agricultural community in the interior BC, which I'm sure it will. So it was originally crafted from a Comox Valley Farmers Institute resolution that went forward to their organization, and but it's been modified by staff. And thank you very much for the final outcome of this requested action. I think it's very respectful, but at the same time, it does point out the hardship that it does inflict on the smaller farmers, especially. So I appreciate your support.
Yeah, thanks very much for bringing this forward, Director Grieve. Really appreciate that. There's a couple of comments coming up. We'll start off with Director Brown.
Yeah, thanks for bringing this forward. I agree with the motion, but I also think that's going to take a really long time to work its way through the process. And potentially we might be better off, or in tandem with this resolution, to meet with Minister of Agriculture staff and talk to them directly about the struggles through, because it's specific to the application process and the process that's been designed. And I think we might get further with them faster than the resolution can, but I'm happy to support the resolution as well.
I'll just go to Director Morgan. She hasn't spoken, but I'll come right back to you to Director Grieve. I imagine we could probably do both.
Okay, I don't mind if Director Grieve wanted to respond, but anyway, okay. Yeah, I just want to thank Director Grieve for bringing this forward. I'm really happy to see it. I'm also thinking that I know we don't always do a lot of fanning out our resolutions to the rest of the province, as many, we often get in our email calls to support motion resolutions that are going forward. And I just think this is one, as Director Grieve mentioned, would be super relevant to many people across the province. And I guess in response to Director Brown's comment, I've noticed over the years at UBCM that the squeaky wheel does sometimes get the grease, and that sometimes a resolution that has had really loud vocal support, we do see the action sooner rather than later. And I just think this might be one that it would be helpful for us to fan out to the rest of the province and just have a good showing at UBCM on this one. Thank you.
That's a really interesting suggestion, and I don't know if perhaps you'd want support from the municipalities in the regional district as well to show a bit of urban-rural solidarity, but I'll turn it over to you, Director Grieve.
No, I have no problem in using a multi-pronged approach for this. And I would be very surprised if the resolution committee at UBCM doesn't have a similar resolution from somewhere else. I haven't heard as much, but I would be very surprised if it wasn't also or similar kind of a resolution coming forward from other jurisdictions. I know that right now that the fruit growers in the Okanagan are really, really hurting. And, you know, that's not just water, it's just climate change in general. So yeah, no, I wouldn't be opposed to a multi-prong approach, but I would caution a little bit of realism that we are in an election cycle and nothing moves, nothing gets heard. So we may not see too much in the way of action. But there again, come UBCM in February when they have their advocacy days, that would be the time that would bring it forward to whomever forms the government at that point in time. Thank you.
Should be noted that the day after UBCM ends is the day that the writ drops. So just in terms of when things grind to a complete halt, that's roughly that. Director Brown, oh, actually, sorry, Director Hardy, you haven't spoken yet. Your number is 6.
Yeah, thanks. I guess the question that I got for staff regarding the process with regards to who develops policies revolving around the water for agriculture. Is it the Ministry of Agriculture that develops the policy, or is it the Walrus? Because I know from different other fields that I've worked in or operated in before, it was the Ministry of Agriculture that developed the policy, and then it was Lands and Water BC or Walrus that implemented that policy and took care of the enforcement, et cetera. So I'm just wondering again what that process is. If how much of a role does the Ministry of Agriculture play with regards to policy, et cetera, and how much Walrus does? Thanks.
I'm by no means an expert on the different pieces of the two ministries there, but I think it is fair to say that there's an opportunity for a more concerted effort to work together. If Mark or Alana or any of the other members of EMT have more information that they could add to answer your question, by all means, I'd welcome them up. Not necessarily. So yeah, by no means an expert, but I think this resolution does indicate some opportunity for a more concerted effort, and that would be the request of the board if it's supported here.
So you're going. So I guess the advocacy, I'm just trying to understand the process here moving forward. So it sounds to me like the advocacy work is going to be with both agriculture and Walrus at the same time.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Great. And Director Brown.
Yes, and so I just want to say that I have raised this twice now in the emergency management calls that we have with multiple ministry staff in attendance. And the thing about meetings with staff, even outside of an election year, is that you can combine multiple ministries. So we could have the Ministry of Agriculture staff present at the meeting with Walrus or whoever's making the decision about water. And secondly, just want to let everyone know that I have been advised by a sitting cabinet minister to not even bother meeting with ministers this year at UBCM. That staff would be the way to go because, of course, ministers can't make promises at all this year. So
That makes a lot of sense. I was just going to ask Director Grieve if you do think it would be useful to have municipalities consider supporting this, bring this to their tables, given the limited time before the deadline.
Well, I would look to staff then to what would be their opinion on the best way forward on this. Would we send it out to municipalities for endorsement, or how would we do that?
I think what I've often seen is one jurisdiction will endorse a submission to the UBCM, and then they circulate that to other local governments to gather support and interest in when you're attending UBCM to support the resolution on the floor. So if the board supports this resolution, if the board's interested, we would fan that out to the local governments in BC.
Okay.
I'm not sure if there would be much more value in each of the jurisdictions, in
Same
Forest Valley
jurisdiction.
considering it as well, because
Yeah.
you wouldn't submit, the same resolution from multiple jurisdictions to UBCM.
And also for the multi-pronged approach, just sort of a notice of motion that we arrange a meeting with both ministries at UBCM, even if it is a lame duck government at that point.
All right, thanks for agreeing. Okay, so we have, were we on receipt? I think we were on receipt. Okay, thanks. So we'll dispense with that. Any opposed? And the requested action? Moved and seconded. Any opposed? Seeing none. Thanks very much for bringing this to the table, Director Grieve. And I think we're just, no addendums, no media questions. We're just looking at termination. Oh, sorry. Wish fulfillment. No, there's more to come. So we're going to adjourn for a few minutes to go to